Eric Burgess here with Music Marketing TV, and today I want to show you some really cool things you can do with a chorus in a gnarly bass sound. Make some cool textures and really influence how it sits in the mix. Let's take a look at a quick example. Alright, I have this example here. I'm just going to sort of lead into it. This is the bass sound in question. Here's some of the automation that goes with it. Let's just hear it. Nice. There is a little pop there, some sort of a sample pop. So that's, just so you know, that was there, not intentional. So let's take a look at this now. I'm going to be focusing in on the chorus, specifically Syntorus 2, and what it is doing. This is an extremely complicated sound. The effect stack is, it's not like super big, but it's got stages to it. And this is going to be, this would be like a long explanation, along with just where we're starting as a core sound. So I'm just going to give you a super brief rundown of what's happening. I have a synthesizer generating a square wave, and it is specifically a Harmor. Harmor has this really cool ability to tune the harmonics individually from the fundamental frequency. So a lot of the glides you're hearing are either slide notes or they are detuning automation. If we actually look in here, that's what these are. Now they're very small because they have a big impact. Like for example, this one's particularly very hearable. That thing. And so it's generating that. It's also got some unison on it to give it a stereo image and removing a low pass filter around. So that's the bass sound. There's also some distortion, bunch of stuff. And then we bring it into the mixer, we EQ it, we run it through Syntorus, which is what we're going to be focusing on. We hit an EQ that gain stages it basically for distortion, for frequency gain staging. I want more high end for the gain staging. Run it through a gatekeeper, it's some rhythm stuff, distortion, compression, and also some mid-side stuff, more distortion. And then finally the end, just a little bit of presence. And then, you know, the rest is like just going to be mixing it in. So we're going to be focusing in on this step. So I'm going to assume you've already got a crazy sound. You've got a crazy sound and it's like largely there. But let's take the Syntorus off. Let's just hear this in isolation and just hear it. So that's where I am right now. And I'm listening to this going, this is good. This is nice. I like the tone. I like the texture. It's got some cool rhythms in it. But I would really like it to sit a little differently in the mix. It's very bright. It's going to argue with the violins for the high end. I don't like that. Let alone how it's also going to sit with the drums. Now, keep in mind, this hasn't even been mixed yet, but I can already tell that it's just a little brighter than I would like. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab Syntorus. You could also grab like God Phaser or just about anything else that can do like chorusing and phasing. I really like Syntorus because of the way their LFOs work. We're actually going to use it to do a couple tricks. And if we just add this, here's what it sounds like after. So we've added some pulsing that wasn't necessarily there before. Versus. And it's also just been subdued a lot, but the high end is still there. This is going to just be a bit friendlier to sit in this particular case. If I had something with less elements in it, I'd probably go with the more aggressive version of it, just because there'd be less stuff for it to fight with. Now let's go ahead, let's take a look at what specifically Syntorus is doing. The first line is doing something that's pretty clever. It is being used as basically just an amplitude envelope. So if we look at the first LFO, we see it is a saw wave. And this saw wave is moving at 16th notes, and the tremolo is the only thing on. You notice everything else is off. So the only thing that this is doing is volume shaping. If I actually remove the second mixer slot, Let's go ahead and dial it back to just this effect. So you can hear that doing its thing. If I take this off and just have the second delay line on. So it's mixing in this pulsing thing. That's what the first one's doing. That's literally all it's doing. So pretty straightforward thing there for the pulsing. Now the second line is where the smearing comes into play. So we'll mix this in. And I would like this to be louder than this. And what the second line is doing, its job is first the chorusing. So it's going to smear it. And this is as long as there's a smeared element and it gets added to the bright side, it will diminish the brightness of the sound just because of masking and phasing. So this is going to help reduce the sort of harshness of the sound. And the depth is quite high. We're mixing it in. And again, this doesn't have any depth change at all. So that's not a problem. And we're even letting a little bit of the dry sound through here. We have an offset just to sort of set it in place. And we also have a tremolo on this one. Now, if you look at the LFO on this one, it's actually slower. But this one's 16th notes. This one is a dotted half note. So it is a slower thing just to add motion and variation to the sound. But we also see that its tremolo is also on. So this also is going to change the volume of the sound. So this is in large part also, besides just sort of smearing it out, it's also just pulling it back for us, but it's pulling it back in only the chorused sense. So the dry sound is going through and being sort of pumped differently than the chorused sound. And so this first one, the depth is down. So this one is not chorused. It's just basically volume shaping. And the second one is chorused, as you can see. But the volume shaping is very different. And there's also a phase difference between the left and the right on the LFO. So this is just going to help with stereo image. It's a really, really nice way to just open things up, vary it up, and also just sort of tone it back just a touch, as well as take care of some volume issues. So very, very, very cool. Yeah, and then the rest is just songwriting and making cool things. I kept the automation the same, but I could probably do some things with the filter coming up and down. Wanted it to remain relatively the same just because of the nature of the phrase and how the track was progressing. I didn't want it to get overly complicated, ironically, considering the effect stack that I went with. If you have any questions about this, let me know, subscribe, and have a blessed day.